Hey, it's syndicated radio talk show host, author, singer, Al Cole, welcoming you to another edition of People of Distinction, the talk that gives an in-depth view of some of the most dynamic, intelligent, and successful people on the planet. I come from CBS Radio. My shows are nationally syndicated, and I've helped pave the way to treating women, guys too, with the dignity that they deserve. And I do that by way of my show, People of Distinction, aired on very dignified networks. Yeah, and the biggest one is Apple's iTunes Radio Network. Under their professional news talk division, Apple airs CBS shows and Fox News, BBC, NPR, the whole kit and caboodle. So we get great feature for our guests. And also I have my alliances coming from CBS Radio. I've been very blessed with pretty high-scale alliances, such as with Ariana Huffington, the founder of the Huffington Post and her Thrive Global Network and all of those introductions. We love that. And also, I'm a media consultant coming from CBS Radio. I've taught a lot of the professional broadcasters over there to talk good. Hey. And to framework their messages in really great and positive ways to their audiences. And I do the same with my individual clients. I have clients come to me nationally, internationally, if they're going to be doing a lot of talk. And particularly talk with digital media, podcasting talk, being on AM, FM radio, or TV talk. And I help people to do that core message that is so very, very important. Put it together in really gripping ways, maybe a 3, 4, 5-minute core message that can be expanded to a 30-minute, 40-minute interview, as well as a keynote if we do live performing that way. And also I'm a national voiceover artist and a whole bunch else. I'm a New York Times best-selling author with Chicken Soup for the Soul, which is distributed by CBS's Simon & Schuster. So you can read up more on Al Cole at my website. Go to peopleofdistinction.org and check it all out there. And you can hear my shows there, my Apple shows on my station page and all of that. And if you want to email me at alcoleholic@gmail.com. You heard me right. That's ALCOLEHOLIC@gmail.com. I really want to thank my CBS radio listeners for coming up with that handle, Alcoholic. We love that. Like, from the beginning, my CBS radio listeners are saying, Al, we love what you're doing there, brother. In fact, we're hooked on it. We're Alcoholics. Hey. Coming up, a lady that you're going to love. Her name is Joy Nugent, and she's written quite a few books. She's going to be talking about, I believe, 3 of them, and we're going to start out with one of them that is titled As Good as Goodbyes Get. Okay. Now, I know you're asking, wow, it sounds like a catchy title there, Al. What does it mean? Goodbyes and as good as they get. Sometimes when we say goodbye to somebody, maybe, family member, they've traveled, maybe, who knows, maybe 20 miles, maybe 2,000 miles. To see us, and we're weeping when we have to say goodbye. We have a great time. Well, what about if goodbye really means that final goodbye? Death. Death and dying, people, we got to put that on the radar screen. Now, we know that the biggest deal in life, first and foremost, is to be born. All right, so we're all babies when we're born. And we all say hello to life. We say, wow, life, thank you for inviting me into this beautiful adventure. And we love that. I think there's not a baby born that says, I don't want to be here. We all, in our initial stages and innocent stages, we say, thank you. Thank you for inviting me in life. And we love that. Well, we all know that life, at least here on Earth, is temporary. And we go through a process of dying, and we go through certainly a process of death. We don't go through it alone. It might seem like we do, but we have a lot of family members, and we have a lot of friends, and a lot of people who we have touched, and they've touched our lives, who go through the process with us. Sometimes it's that grieving process. Death and dying has to be faced for what it is. Now, guess what, people? One of the things that we don't talk about as much with death and dying is there a right time to die? Can we end our lives our way? We're not talking about necessarily suicide. There are people who understand the spiritual aspects of this. They know when they're ready to, quote unquote, pass on or pass over and move on to another life. Death is just a signification of, whoa, there's some more life to be lived, maybe in another direction, in another dimension. We're going to be talking deep talk here, people, and Joy is going to guide us through all of that with as good as goodbyes get. And that's not all. She's going to be talking about at least a couple of other books as well. So I want you to stick around. You're going to be really elevated by this conversation. And, you can order her books at Amazon. Joy Nugent, As Good as Goodbyes Get, and everything else that you see there. I want you to order that at Amazon.com. And I will say she was brought to me by a great book publisher, NurseLink. And they're a book publisher that helps people not only move their books, especially for that first, second book, but they give that personal approach as well. So they move it, their way, the people's way. And we love that. NurseLinkPublishing.com. That's where you want to go to connect with NurseLink. Welcome, Joy, to People of Distinction with Al Cole. It's really a pleasure to have you on today. How are you, Joy?
Oh, thank you, Al. Thank you for this privilege. This is my very favorite topic, and it's one that not many people want to listen to or talk about. It's something they think will go away if they don't talk about it and don't think about it, which means such a terrible thing because they miss out on living, because we're born to die, and the whole thing of birth and death are all connected, and it gives us purpose and meaning to look at why we're here. Why am I born? Am I a soul that travels from lifetime to lifetime? What is my purpose? So by not looking at death, we miss out on really so much of life, because this fear stays there and it permeates everything that we do. Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, who is one of my mentors, said if we conquer the fear of dying, we conquer all other fears. It's a little bit like, beads on a string. You let one off and they all flow off. Mm-hmm. So by looking at death, what we're really doing is learning to live and learning the purpose of life and why we're here. Yes. And to live without fear.
Absolutely. You said it so well, and we're going to be looking for other things that you're going to say very well in the same vein. Now, I'm assuming, and it's just an assumption, but I think it's a realistic assumption, that you have gone through that process. Not saying that you've died and then come back to life. Who knows? Reincarnation could be real. But you've experienced the death and the dying of loved ones around you. And you've grown from that. And you have given that wisdom to other people to grow as well. Am I on the right track there, Joy?
Look, that is so right. I was very privileged. My midlife crisis, I went back to nursing, having been the wife and of an orthodontist and the mother of 4 children, all at college. And I was at a loose end. My midlife crisis, went back to nursing and worked with the Catholic nuns in a hospice, and just got very at home with death and the way they handled the people who were dying in the hospice, that it was a spiritual event, not necessarily a medical event. And then I went into private practice as a nurse, which most people don't do as nurses. And for 30 years, I had a private nurse practice and looked after people in a very personal way. I employed lots of people to help me, and they would do the hard yards, and I'd be there 24 hours a day on call, and encourage people to live and die their way, in their own homes, doing what was important to them, with not only empowering them, but also looking at their fears and their phobias and saying to release what perhaps they couldn't say themselves, because all this is very much an energetic exchange. We're energy. Everything is energy bodies. We come in as spirits having a physical form, but it's basically energy. And in that energy, yes, we have with the soul a personality, but the personality is made up of a mental body and an emotional body as well as a physical body. And most people, when they think of death, only think of the physical body. But we do have to have our emotional body and our mental body in order to, because that's what lives on after us. The physical body drops away. So it's terribly important to have no regrets, to say goodbye, to be in a good space is another way of saying it. But how can people be in a good space if death is such a taboo subject and we don't talk about it?
Mm-hmm.
In As Good as Goodbyes Get, I just wrote stories. It's easy to read. They were just stories of some of the people that I had the privilege to care for. And each one made me more aware of what the dying needed. It was a very one-to-one, personal, intimate relationship. And this is not a relationship that most people have when they nurse the dying in an institution or a hospice or a medical model of some sort. What we forget is that we are souls on a journey, and it is the soul that needs to be understood and nurtured and grown. Does that make sense to you?
Oh, it makes great sense. Look, I got to tell you, I'm going to tell you through my listeners, I'm telling you, Joy really understands what she's talking about. I've had many people on the show exploring death and dying, and those people know what they're talking about as well. Hospice people, particularly, they understand the death, the dying process. And it not just from the point of view of the individual who's dying, but from the point of view also of loved ones, bringing them together, that beautiful, beautiful epiphany of life that can be gathered at that particular point, wisdom that can be gathered. Joy is describing it so very well, and I want you to order her books at Amazon.com. As Good as Goodbyes Get, that's one of them. She's going to be talking about couple of others as well. This is really gripping stuff that you're talking about, Joy, and I applaud you for all of the years of service to our human family, being involved with hospice. That is one of the most, it's delicate, and it's also solid. It's delicate because we're dealing with death, we're dealing with grief. At the same time, we're dealing with elevation. We're dealing with something else that's coming that people could actually even rejoice about. And so it's solid work that way. It's spiritual work, and that is so wonderful. Give us an example of someone that you worked with in hospice, someone that you worked with from both sides, that individual who is dying, and then family members. And maybe you even brought them together closer than they ever had been. And when that person died, maybe it was almost that rejoice aspect where people were saying, but now I know that person so well. Closure was one of the big things. I have now closed with that person and bonded with that person even better than ever. Give us one example of that, Joy.
Well, I think what you're saying is true. But, while I very much talk about hospice, I talk about hospice as a philosophy. It doesn't have to happen in a building or in a particular service. Hospice is a way of honouring the dying. But what I think is most important is that we realise that what leaves that body at death is energy, that we are energy beings. And what I try to do in my work is to look at Eastern philosophy, which looks at chakras. We have a base chakra, and that base chakra is all about tribe and our family and our connections and our religions and our school groups and our college groups and our peer groups. And all of that is about that religion, and all of that has to be got right from an energetic point of view. And then the second chakra is all about sexuality and creativity and relationships, and that has to be in good working order too. And then we have the third chakra, which is about our self-esteem, our knowledge, what we've done in the world. And what I used to say to people, it's most important. How do you want to be remembered? And this really brings them up sharp. How do I want to be remembered? What have I done in my life? I don't want to get to my end of my life with empty hands, which is why I say all of the things I write about is not to help people die, but to help them live in the first place. That we really do need to look at a continuum of life and death. But, it's the message of Christians of Jesus dying on the cross. His suffering has brought millions of people together in a compassionate way to look at things. And so it might be a mother who is dying. But when that mother is dying, it's often the family that forget their differences and their miserablenesses and the who's got what's and the ego things and come together at a mother's bedside. So in lots of ways, it's about suffering and sacrifice. But when a mother can see perhaps the disjointed family coming together, it gives her death some meaning and her suffering some meaning. So the most important thing we need to make sure in our life is that we find meaning in what we do. And a lot of the things that happen to us, we might say, how could there be a God that did such a thing? Well, God didn't do it. We did it. We are responsible. And I think that's one of the lessons that I always try to teach, is we are responsible. And it's about self-healing, and no one else can do it but ourselves.
And what you're talking about right now, does that run through the other books that you've written that you want to talk about? There are 2 other books, I believe. Give us
yes, it is
examples.
Interesting. It does. In the second book, I talk about doing it my way, and I encourage nurses to set up their own nurse practices so that they can have that special relationship. We get so bogged down in institutional care. But if one really wants to be flexible and support people as they want to be supported, they're the important person, not the institution and the way they do things. But in my second book, I talk about my life. And a lot of my life was spent in Malaysia and helping a little hospice grow in East Malaysia in Sandakan. And they would honour me in many ways, and I would take education there once a year. But I always said I learnt more from Eastern philosophy and their way of doing things than I ever did. If I gave education in Australia, it would be about what drugs go in a syringe driver or what medications can we use. But up there, they wanted to know about emotional and spiritual pain. And I think this is what it is really, truly all about, is we have to look at the emotional and the spiritual pain. And the way I do this is through the energy chakras. We look at the heart chakra. We all have losses. And we look at the throat chakra of how we communicate. What was our will? We look at the third eye chakra, and we look at what insights did we gain. We get an impression of people. When we move into a room, we can feel whether the energy is good or fearful or not. And that was my skill, to sit by the bedside and transform negative energy into calm, positive energy. So what I say to people dying is about an exchange of energy. The people that are at the bedside who are most helpful, whether they're relatives or they're nurses or doctors, they have to work on their own energy to be of any good and any help to the person who's actually dying. And of course, the crown chakra is our connection with our spiritual realm. And it's all about energy. But we don't teach people how to die from an energy point of view. And remember, energy is the soul. But I want to also stress that the soul talks to us through the body. So that if we've got a pain in our gut, well, what's going on in that energy chakras? What's happening? And I used to do this rather jokingly with people. One lovely lady I was looking after, she was 90. She kept wanting to have enemas, telling me she was constipated. And I'm saying, look, your bowels are really clear. You've got rid of all the shit in your life. It's okay to die now. But people don't say this sort of thing to people. Mm-hmm. They don't look at what is going on not only in the mental plane. We're quite good at that. We explain things and we talk about things, and we're positive, and we can say mantras, and we can have a spiritual practice. But there's also the emotional energy that needs to be sorted. And of course, as energy beings, its energy vibrates, and it vibrates at different hertz, and the highest vibration is love. And so how many people, I would say to people, look, they'd say to me, oh, I haven't got a religion, I haven't been to church, I said, it doesn't matter. God's love. In any language, God's love. Can you feel love? And I would ask people when they were dying to perhaps hold in their mind a memory of something was loving. It might have been their wedding day, the birth of a child, or to look at a mountain scene or a sunset. Whatever gave them a sense of love and awe and peace, to hold that feeling in their mind and just concentrate on their breathing and allow that breathing to gently stop when it was time. It was like imagining a Buddhist practice. I learned a lot from Buddhism. There's a Buddhist practice with the heart chakra and the crown chakra. You imagine they're connected with a tube, and in that tube is a pearl. And the pearl is your essence, your life, all you've achieved in this lifetime. And with each breath, that pearl goes up and down, up and down. And at the same time, the crown chakra is opening. And when it is ready, Buddha, Mary, Jesus, whoever your higher powers may be, harvest your pearl. So we need practices that help people transition. You know, Elizabeth Kubler-Ross called death transition. And it is transition from this form body to a formless body. But during this time, I've had so many experiences where spirits and energies from the other world come to support the person who's dying. For example, a room may be really cold outside, but the room itself is warm. It's got energy in it. Where did that energy? I can't see it. Some people can. But where did that energy come from? And so many people who I know and I write about it who are dying, elderly people held out their hand. You know, they were seeing something on a blank wall that I couldn't see. But they were smiling and talking. And one patient I looked after who was a lawyer, lovely lady, but very much into spiritual beliefs. And she died at home at 9 o'clock in the morning. And the room was not lit. It was just in shadows a little bit. And when she took her last breath, I saw an orb rise from her head. And it seemed to have a half orb behind it. And I was amazed. I thought there must be a trick. There were no lights. There was nothing on. It was just a calm room, 9 o'clock in the morning. And I saw this orb rise through the ceiling. And so many people who take photographs can see orbs, and they often say, whether they're at the funeral, that people who have died are actually at their own funeral. But there's so much we don't understand about this. And I think we do need to get into a spiritual, energetic way of looking at death and dying that's quite different to the normal medical model, an ego-driven model. The ego doesn't want to die. You know, it's all about me and what I've got and what I'm going to lose, and isn't it sad and isn't it terrible? That's very much an ego perspective. But when one talks from a soul perspective, look, it's release. That person has done its work on earth, and the personality has had its experiences, and it's ready to go on. And perhaps in another lifetime, it will have another lesson it wants to learn, and will have another earthly experience. But to look at life as a continuum, and I firmly believe in reincarnation, that I have lived before. I know I talk to people who've had past lives. I also know that we can heal past lives of our ancestors in this life, because what we bring through with us is not just the DNA of our physical body. We bring through a DNA of this emotional body and mental body from past lives. So if we don't deal with something in one lifetime, we get the lesson to deal with again in another lifetime.
That's right. And in this lifetime, I'm going to make a reflection here, as I do, on people of distinction with Al Cole, and then we're going to end the whole show with some possibility thinking, as I do standardly. Now, I'm going to make a reflection here on what Joy was talking about. Eastern philosophy, I have always been an adherent of that, especially with Buddhism and Hinduism in general, the Rig Veda. Love that. The Upanishads. So many inspiring works from Eastern philosophy. When we talk about energy, well, we know that we are energy beings at heart. Now, get that, people. I'm really talking about heart energy right now. One of the greatest energies of all. The heart is known for, kind of metaphorically, the seat of love. Heart energy, electromagnetic energy, it's concentrated in the heart. Greatest area of electromagnetic energy throughout the body. Now, get this, people. If you, and I'll try to say it very quickly, a quick exercise here. You look at your hand, and you draw your hand closer and closer to your heart. And just before you touch your hand to your heart, do what you probably have never done before, at least not consciously. Kiss your hand. As you kiss your hand, you are energizing that hand in terms of not only that beautiful electromagnetic energy, but you are electrifying that hand, that is you, that's your hand, in terms of, wow, that hand knows that you're grateful, maybe for the first time, in its life. It has a life of its own, and it says to you, back metaphorically, wow, thank you for honoring me after all of these years of service. When you were just taking me for granted, but that's okay, I understand that. Now you are honoring me. Your hand is bursting with love. It is just like that baby, who is you, came out of that birth canal one day and said, thank you for honoring me, life. I love you. See, love, the great vibrational energy, is not constricted by a body. It's not constricted by even a universe. It is all around. It is the universe. And that heart energy is a big, big source of it within your body. Now, getting to the Eastern philosophy aspect, one of the things that I know that Joy knows is Eastern philosophy is built on maybe pantheistic thinking and also a monistic sort of thinking. It's not like Western philosophy. And as you kiss your hand, and your hand now touches your heart and bursts into that beautiful energy, you can go on the inside of your body now, literally. And you don't need a doctor to get there. And you can see all of the beautiful aspects of your own body that aspects mirror what is out there on the outside. All of your friends. Everything that's out there that's meaningful to life is in the inside, too. You know, it's in the inside consciousness. It can also be in the inside of your body. And maybe for the first time, you are blessing that beautiful white corpuscle that might have saved your life last night. And again, that white corpuscle is saying, thank you for realizing how blessed your body is and how blessed your mind is. And you go upstairs even more, how blessed your spirit is. And now, monistically, we are putting it all together. We are one. Not only we, the human family, but life itself came from a common source. And that common source mimics and reflects the beauty within you. That is such a wonderful philosophy of life. I adhere to that as well. And I know that Joy does. And so I want you to go to Amazon.com, order all of her books. Joy Nugent, special guest here on People of Distinction with Al Cole. Let's take it out, Joy, with some possibility thinking. I end all of my shows with possibility thinking. It's a way to encapsulate not only the information of any interview that I do, but particularly the inspiration, the spirit. And I'm going to put it this way. Possibilities in our human future where death and dying are a big aspect of the living. And we talk about it. And we easily communicate to each other from maybe day one about death, about dying. And the things that you've learned in your many years of hospice service, now it's stamped into our DNA. Magically, as a human family, We're all hospice workers in that metaphoric sense. We understand what you have understood for years about the death and dying process. And that's the only change. That's the only change in our society. It might happen 10 years from now, 50 years from now, maybe next week if we're really lucky. What kind of world would that look like that it doesn't look like now if we recognize day to day the death and dying process and we talk about it freely? What kind of world would that look like?
Oh, Al. Well, I was just blown away because I look at the news and I look at the war and I look at the guns and I look at the what have you, and I'm thinking, why do we want to blow up this beautiful world, which is so in tune with nature? You look at a flower that's opening and you look at the divine energy, the feminine energy of nature and flowers and nurturing and creativity. And you look at the divine energy of the masculine that's supportive and strong and all of those lovely things, yin and yang together. That's what I call God, is a mixture of the divine energy and the masculine energy. But look, we do need to begin to understand this by looking at the purpose of dying and how we're dying, and to see life and death through the lens of soul.
And I'm going to cap it off with a couple of cents of my own and possibility thinking that underscore the great work and the great reflections of Joy Nugent on people of distinction. One final reflection here, people. We know about a phrase called, be the very best that we can be. All right. Not a bad phrase if we're able to live up to that, or even understand that we can become the very best that we can be, if we have some sort of statistical monitor of that even leads to that point. Oh, yeah, I'm being the very, very best that I can be right now. Maybe a few minutes later, I'm not really being the very best. There's a better phrase. For that magical world into the future where we face death and dying, kind of like every day of our life when we talk about it, be the very best that somebody else can be. That's even higher. And what that means harkens back to you are everything around you. You have the ability to synergize. And as you synergize the other things around you, you create that mirror image between the inner and the outer. And as you learn more about the outer, and now you bring it into the inner focus, you understand other people's awareness, consciousness even more, and vice versa. As you understand your own consciousness and your own love energy, you can understand that it resides within every single human being and actually within every particle of life. So when you want to be the very best that somebody else can be, or something can be, maybe even a tree or a waterway, at that point, you are merging with that beautiful pantheistic and now monistic aspect of life, where you are the salt in the sea. And you're seeing every other bit of salt that is a part of you at that particular point. You are adding that beautiful flavor to the lives of other human beings. And as you do that, you're attracting other human beings to you. You can serve them. You can be the very best example of what they can be. As you do that, you know that your life is a life of service. And it's positive service. It's grateful service. And other people are serving you, and you accept it. That receptivity aspect within you is saying, come on, give me more of that. I love the guidance that you're giving. See, we can be guidance people. We can be students. We can be the generators of guidance to others. We can be teachers. And that's our master plan. We're both. And it's the inner and outer. Once we start to understand that the inner matches the outer, mirror image-wise, because of how we got here in the first place. Let's call God love. Let's call that universal energy, that guiding force in our lives. Let's call that love, from whence we came and where we go. And where we go again and again and again. Beautiful, beautiful energy here that Joy is talking about. And that I'm talking about too, on people of distinction with Al Cole. And I want one more time for you to order Joy's books at Amazon.com, starting with As Good as Goodbyes Get, and everything else is there. And I want to thank NurseLink for inviting Joy to be a very, very special guest on People of Distinction today. Go to NurseLink.com, publishing.com, NurseLinkpublishing.com, and you're going to love what they offer you as an author as well. Thank you so much, Joy, for bringing out the best here of People of Distinction with Eastern thought, chakras, and beautiful energy all around us, matching the wonderful energy that we can give to our universe as well. Thank you so much, Joy. This has been a pleasure, and I wish you all the very best in what you do.
Thank you, Al. Thank you. Oh, good fun. I loved all the things you said. I thought I was just going to talk to a regular shock doc.
Nah, not at all.
Well done is all I can say.
Well, thank you.